How are you doing today?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on. Perfect time, I feel like. Blackhawks are going into the break, All-Star break, so really a nice time to kind of evaluate what they have in the season. One thing I wanted to start off with is the power play. The Blackhawks power play is on fire right now. What is going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a little bit of a surprise the last month and change, the way that the power play has been producing. I think, the last couple of years, the problem with the Blackhawks, they've had all this firepower, but yet the power play was consistently towards the bottom third of the league, except for 1 year. I think it was the 2014-15 year. They were second in the league. I'll have to check my own stats on that one. But, in the last month and a half, converting at, 39.6%. They were at one point this year the worst in the league, and now basically since the middle of December, they've been the best in the league. You look at the personnel that they're putting out there. Patrick Kane obviously is leading the way on the power play and just in general for this team all season. Pairing him up with Alex DeBrincat, I think, has been a big factor for the power play success. DeBrincat's kind of taken the role that Artemi Panarin played not too long ago for the Blackhawks on the on that left dot, being able to fire off shots from there. That's really helped. And then of course Eric Gustafsson has been having a career year this year. Especially on the offensive side, quarterback in the power play, he's really stepped into a role that Duncan Keith used to play consistently for the Blackhawks, being the power play quarterback, and being able to move the puck around the perimeter, be able to kind of decipher, how to distribute the puck from the blue line, and also being able to fire off a shot here and there. So a lot of things just kind of are clicking at the right time. Coming into place on the power play, and it's made the team a little bit more exciting to watch, a little bit more bearable to watch this last month and a half.
Yeah, so right now, I saw this today from Slavko Bekovic from NBC Sports Chicago. He put current pace for Blackhawks players. I think you also had this on your Twitter timeline. Kane's on pace for 46 goals, 114 points. Taves 35, 76 points. DeBrincat 40 and 68 points. Right now, the top line as of yesterday, it was Kane, Taves, and Drake Caggiula, who they just got from Edmonton. Are we ever going to see a Kane, Taves, DeBrincat line, though, or maybe even a Kane, Strome, DeBrincat line?
I feel like Jeremy Colleton has tinkered a little bit with lines this season, and the Taves Kane combination on a line together has been called the nuclear option. In recent years, they were paired together early on in their tenure with the Blackhawks, but they've kind of been spread out for the majority of their time on the team. But putting them together, Drake Caggiula has actually been pretty decent in that role, playing alongside those two guys. The trade for him has worked out so far in the short term. But putting DeBrincat with Taves and Kane, I think from a skill set standpoint is, Blackhawks fans kind of salivate over that, but it really only works if you're in a power play setting, because all three of those guys are highly skilled guys that, demand the puck, and you really don't have a guy that's going to go into the corners and, go get pucks. Who's going to be the one that's going to, set up in front of net, behind the net, who's going to back check, things like that from a forward standpoint, that those three guys, I don't think they can always be relied on to play those roles. So I think when you have guys like a Drake Caggiula or Brandon Saad at times has been paired up on that top line and played that role this season, and I think you can have your top skill guys paired together, but really for the way that this roster is made up right now, it really only works on the power play. Could we see Dylan Strome move into there? I don't know. Again, it's more of like a power play kind of situation, because Strome has played really well at the center position. And, I think putting him out on the wing and putting Taves down the middle, I mean, it could work. But again, who's going to be the one that goes back and back checks? Who's going to be the one that goes into the corners? Who's going to be the one that, really is going to do the hard work, do the unsung work to get the puck to the more skilled guys. So, it could happen, but I mean, it's at this point, it's, what can you throw at the wall and what's going to stick? So.
Yeah, this one obviously is working right now. You mentioned Strom's been playing well. Kajula, obviously, in limited action in Blackhawks sweaters, looked pretty good as well. Should fans be more confident in Stan Bowman? Because I feel like for a while there, he was starting to lose the fan base in terms of the confidence in him, but he was able to flip Nick Schmaltz, who was underperforming in a contract year, for a Strome who's thrived with the Blackhawks, and Brandon Manning, a 2-year contract, he was able to flip for Kajula, who's looked good so far. Should fans be more confident in him now?
I think it should give them a little bit more of confidence, but to your point, I mean, you're right. He really has lost a lot of good faith with the fan base over the last season and a half or so, and I think it had their summer blockbuster signings not been Cam Ward, Chris Kunitz, and Brandon Manning, he may not be playing from behind with these trades that he's had to make. The Nick Schmaltz trade for Dylan Strome, I think that has been a big win. Also due to the fact that Nick Schmaltz is not going to be out for the rest of the year, unfortunately for him.
Right.
Now, obviously, that's something you can't predict, but Dylan Strome has really stepped into his role and really started to show signs of what made him a top overall pick just a couple of years ago. So if he's a part of the future for the Blackhawks, which I think he should be considered, that's a big win for Bowman. The Brandon Manning for Drake Kajula trade, again in the short term, looks like another win because Edmonton hasn't been playing Brandon Manning, and the Blackhawks improved their draft position and basically got a forward that they can move around their lineup that can really play a number of different roles and has the ability to provide a little bit of scoring, provide a little bit of physicality, a little bit of energy, and I think it's been a good pickup in the short term so far. But it's the blockbuster deals that Stan Bowman is going to have to hit on if he's going to make any to improve this team. I mean, you can make small trades, small, so to say, trades for guys that play in bottom six defensemen or bottom pairing defensemen, bottom six forwards. But is it going to be pulling the trigger on trading one of the core pieces to get picks and prospects for the future? Is it going to be it's those more major deals that Bowman's going to have to, if he does make them, he's going to have to hit on to really not only keep the fans on his side, but also keep his position as general manager of the team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting question I have, a really scenario that could be fun, but I don't know. I want to see what your input is. The Blackhawks have cap space this summer. Especially since Nick Schmaltz in the contract year, they're not going to have to pay him now. Artemi Panarin is a free agent. Is that a realistic fit for him to come back to Chicago?
I mean, for him, I think his mindset, and I can't speak for him directly, but I think if I were in his position, I would want to go to a team that's going to pay me the money that I deserve, but is also going to be a contender for a Stanley Cup, either the season he joins them or within a year. I don't really see, even with Artemi Panarin coming back to Chicago, if that were to be the case, I really don't see his addition making this Blackhawks roster, if that's the only improvement they make. I don't see that making them a cup contender, a top cup contender next year or, in the short-term future beyond that. Could they afford him? Yes. Obviously, it would improve their offense to bring him back. But improving the offense is not the key focus that Chicago should really be looking at right now. It's their defense. If Bowman's going to make a move to improve any area of the team, it's got to be the defense, because you have two aging players in Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook that are starting to reach or get to the peak of that cliff that, older veterans start to fall off. And they're locked up long term for, considerable amounts of cap space. And if they're going to transition into mid-pairing or bottom-pairing defensemen in the next year or two, what are you going to have? What do you have behind them to improve the defense? You got guys like Adam Boquist and Ian Mitchell coming in. Henry Yokoharu is also a player that you're going to look at for the future, and what can they do to bring in guys that are going to not break the bank, but also provide some help in a potential top four defensive role. So if you ask me, bringing Artemi Panarin in, bringing him back, I'm sure it can sell some tickets. It'll sell some 72 jerseys, and it can appease a portion of the fan base. But if you're scoring 5-6 goals a night, but you're giving up 6 or 7, you can't sustain that for very long. So while it sounds great, I think the more reasonable move would be to do something to bring in a veteran, reliable defenseman who can kind of help the young group that's going to be coming in from a leadership standpoint, but also on the ice too, who can be reliable. So I know it's been a talking point ever since Panarin has been traded away, but I don't foresee that being the best move that the Blackhawks could make to try and improve them for the long term.
You mentioned a couple of the defensive prospects like Yokoharu, Ian Mitchell, Boquist, and Nicholas Bowden is obviously another one. I would say Yokoharu surprised a lot of people by making the team out of training camp this year. Is that something that next year is possible with not just one of those three other prospects, but two, if not all three of them? Like, what is the timeline for those guys getting at the United Center, joining the team on the United Center ice?
Well, it is possible. I don't think it's realistic. Nicholas Bowden, he was cut from Canada's World Juniors team that Ian Mitchell ended up playing on and playing a major role for Canada in their short World Juniors run. But I think for Mitchell and Boquist, those are the two guys out of those three that I would say have the shortest time between now and when they are in the NHL as compared to Bowden. But as far as it being next year that they're on the team, might be a bit of a stretch, but both guys are very promising. Both guys, within the next 2 seasons are going to probably be playing regular minutes at the NHL level. It goes back to, when is the team going to be competitive? It's going to be hard to, say that you're going to be a top contender in the next year or two when theoretically your top 4 defensemen are going to average the age of, 21 years old. So it's not a lot of teams can pull that off. So I would like to, if the Blackhawks, going into the season, I knew the Blackhawks were not going to be top contenders. And I was an advocate for, if you're going to be bad, at least be young and let your young players come in, learn the game, maybe take some lumps early, but, the way that the Blackhawks were built into their 3 cups kind of dynasty, they had a lot of young players come in some very lean years. And then, 3-4 years down the road, you got guys that are 20, 21, 22 years old that are, seasoned veterans at that point and start to come into their primes. If they could do that again on the defensive end, that would be, obviously the perfect scenario. But I think it's probably at least 2 years before 2 of those 3 are in, probably 3 years before all 3 of them are in the NHL system. And, that's not factoring, trades and anything else that could happen.
So help is definitely coming at some point on the defensive end. And this next question, it's kind of twofold. Corey Crawford, he obviously returned to the ice recently, not in practice, but before practice, getting back out there was huge. but is he kind of going down the path to be nervous about in terms of like Rick Nash? Rick Nash had to retire early because concussions, and if that's something to worry about, are you confident Delia can be the guy? Because in some limited action this year, maybe not limited is not the word, but since joining the Blackhawks, he's looked pretty good out there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Corey Crawford goes, obviously his health is the number one concern. It was the number one concern last season when he went out with his concussion, and now again this year going out with another concussion within the same kind of 12-month time frame. The first and foremost thing that he and the organization need to be concerned about is, getting him back to 100% health, and not, is he healthy enough to play? It's, is he healthy enough to where he's going to potentially avoid any long-term symptoms or issues with concussions? I feel like it's a very real possibility he might not play in the league again. And if that's the reality, then the Blackhawks are in this situation where Colin Delia kind of by default is their goalie of the future. Cam Ward, obviously, just on a one-year deal. Behind that, you got Anton Forsberg in Rockford. He's really not been an option as a backup this year since Crawford has gone down with injury. It was Delia that came up right away and has really stuck. And he's an interesting guy. He's not goalies are always interesting characters, but he's a guy that is very positive. Doesn't really get down on himself. I know last year when he came to Rockford, he had a rough start. He wasn't playing well at the ECHL level with the Indy Fuel, and he came up to Rockford because of the Corey Crawford injury, had a shaky start, and talking with him, he was just saying, my numbers on paper may not be showing the progress that I've been making, but he knew the steps he was taking, and it started to translate into January and February, and he was a big reason why the IceHawks last season made the playoff push that they did. Fast forward to this year, he gets the call up again because of Crawford's injury, and steps right onto the NHL ice and becomes a bit of a difference maker in net for the Blackhawks. And he's really improved from where he was a year and a half ago to this year, and if he continues on that same sort of trajectory, he could be the number one guy, at least the number two guy going into next year if, hypothetically speaking, Corey Crawford does return and is healthy to continue playing. Delia has definitely made a name for himself with the organization, and I think it would be smart for them to invest in him in net, and could potentially be seeing him as the long-term guy.
Yeah, that's something the Blackhawks have always had. They had Crawford, but they always had someone behind him like Ray Emery, Antti Raanta, Scott Darling, and they've kind of been exposed the last 2 years. Maybe not so much this year because they've had other issues, but last year for sure without Crawford, their goaltending depth was left a lot to be desired. I know we talked a couple months ago, and you said this is not a playoff team. I know right now you said this team probably would serve well to have these guys out there developing, taking their lumps because they're not going to make the playoffs anyway. It seems like they're way further back in the playoff race than they are, but they're 7 points back. I think they only have one game ahead of Colorado, who is in that wild card spot, and they're under 500 with their record. Is 7 points, is that something that's completely out of the range of possibility to catch up on? Or if they can stay hot on the power play and Delia can keep his level of play, 7 points doesn't seem like it's that far out, does it?
Well, in mathematically, no. They're not eliminated, but you look at the way that a lot of the teams that are in that playoff mix are playing. It's at a level that the Blackhawks can't find consistently. I think the issue is that you'll have a couple games where they break out and look good against top end teams. The Sunday afternoon barn burner against the Capitals, and their game last night against the Islanders. Two teams that are in the Eastern Conference playoff picture that they were able to get wins against and look at times pretty competent against. The problem is they can't consistently do that. And the more that they have an inability to be consistently good. They're consistently streaky towards the negative side of things. And as you get to the All-Star break, you see they're only a couple points out, but they've played more games than most teams in the league, and they're still in the bottom 5 of points. So I don't feel like there's anything that I've seen this season that tells me that they can go on a 10-game point streak or rattle off 8 games in a row where they come out with wins. I don't think, and those are the kinds of streaks that they're going to need to really solidify themselves back into the playoff picture. And I don't think I see that being a possibility, even with the power play producing how it is right now. How Colin Delia has kind of stepped in and taken over the number 1 role. They have a lot of holes that they're going to have to compensate for if they are going to get themselves back into the playoff picture. And I still just don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, I said 7 points out of the wild card spot, but they're only 2 points ahead of last in terms of points in the NHL in general. So good point there. Do you have any final thoughts before we head off here?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of off of last night's game, it was great to see the compete level that they had. I know that that's a buzzword in the hockey world, but they stuck with the top team. They came back from being down. The overtime period, they had their opportunities, and they go into the shootout, end up getting the win. But those are the kinds of games, and I tweeted it out last night, but those are the kinds of games that the team will need to have the rest of the season, where every once in a while they're going to pull out a win that really showcases the kind of level that they can play at. And that's going to be important for guys who are going to be part of the future of this team next year and the year beyond to realize that they can play at that level, that they can put games like that together, because the goal still this year is get into the lottery, get into the top 3, and get a guy in the draft who can really make a difference in the franchise and hopefully turn the organization around within a year or two. If they do that, and they have they still have Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, these guys that are going to be in their early 30s, but still, at the top of the league as far as, their talent level goes, they can really turn things around within, a few years. And, you remind guys, hey, we have this top level of talent that we can tap into, and, remind them what it takes to win tough games like that. That's the kind of things that they're going to have to learn through games like that, and through losses that are 4-3 in overtime, or 2-1, or things like that, where they have to battle, and they have to stick with tough teams. And if those are lessons that they can take into the next season with the guys that they're build the future with, I think it won't be too long of a rebuild that the organization will have to go through. So I have a lot of hope, but it's being tested right now. That's for sure.